Hello, sports fans. Welcome to Super Sports Central. Today, we're going to be going over my Week 8 NFL Power Rankings. So, going over last week's rankings and what those teams did in Week 7. Last week at number 10, I had the Bears. They were on a bye. 9 was the Commanders. They destroyed the Panthers, winning 40-7. 8 was the Buccaneers. They lost to the Ravens 41-31. 7, I had the Bills. They beat the Titans 34-10. 6 was the Packers. They beat the Texans 24-22. 5 was the Texans. They lost to the Packers 24-22. 4 was the Ravens. They defeated the Buccaneers 41-31. 3 was the Lions. They knocked off the Vikings, winning 31-29. 2 was the Vikings. They lost to the Lions 31-29. And 1 was the Chiefs, who beat the 49ers 28-18. But getting into this week's rankings and beginning things at number 10, I've got the Chicago Bears. So the Bears, they remain at number 10. They're currently sitting at 4-2. They were on a bye this week, and next week they face the Commanders. Coming in at number 9, I have the Steelers. So the Steelers enter my rankings at number 9 after they easily beat the Jets 37-15. The Steelers were great in the win, and they used a big second half to really pull away, as in the second half they outscored the Jets 24-0. Russell Wilson made his Steelers debut, and it was a heavily criticized decision to go with Russ over Justin Fields, as Fields had 10 total touchdowns and 1 interception in the first 6 games. But it was definitely the right decision to start Russell Wilson, and they let Russ cook. He was great, as in his first game as a Steeler, he started off slow, but finished with 264 yards and 3 total touchdowns, 2 passing, 1 rushing. Receiver George Pickens also had his second 100-yard game of the season, as he finished the game with 5 catches for 111 yards and a touchdown. Then defensively for the Steelers, they were also pretty good, allowing just 15 points and pitching a shutout in the second half, also forcing 2 turnovers. But the Steelers, after a good win over the Jets, they're at number 9 with a 5-2 record. Coming in at number 8, I've got the Commanders. So the Commanders move up a couple of spots after they demolished the Panthers 40-7. The offense was great once again, putting up 40 points. And to make things even more impressive, they played most of the game with Marcus Mariota at quarterback, and they still scored 40 points. But Marcus Mariota was pretty good, throwing for 205 yards and 2 touchdowns. And the Commanders also ran the football very effectively, rushing for 214 yards and another score. Now, the reason Marcus Mariota played most of the game at quarterback is because Jaden Daniels was injured early in the game, and he has a rib injury, and is considered week to week, but hopefully he can return soon for the Commanders. Then defensively for the Commanders, they were also pretty good, allowing just 7 points and 180 total yards, but the Commanders, after a blowout win over the Panthers, I have them at number 8. 7th, I've got the Bills. So the Bills come in at number 7 after their 34-10 win over the Titans. The Bills started off really slow, actually trailing 10-7 at halftime, but they used a big second half to get the win, where they outscored the Titans 27-0. Josh Allen was good in the win with 323 yards and 2 touchdowns. Amari Cooper found the end zone in his Bills debut with 4 catches for 66 yards and a touchdown, and rookie receiver Keon Coleman had 125 yards on just 4 catches. Then defensively for the Bills, they were also good, allowing only 10 points, 4.3 yards per play, and also forcing 2 turnovers. But the Bills, after an easy win over the Titans, I have them at number 7. Coming in at number 6, I've got the Texans. So the Texans fall a spot from number 5 to number 6 after their loss to the Packers 24-22. I can understand dropping them a little further, but I wouldn't put the Bills over the Texans right now, because both teams are 5-5, and the Texans beat the Bills just a few weeks ago. But the Texans, they lost to the Packers 24-22 on a walk-off field goal. CJ Stroud really struggled in this game, having his worst game as a pro, throwing for just 86 yards, and was also sacked 4 times. The run game was good for the Texans, as Joe Mixon ran for 115 yards and 2 scores, but the offensive line needs to play better and protect CJ Stroud. Defensively, the Texans were okay. They were able to force 3 turnovers, but they weren't able to hold on for the win. And the Texans, after their second loss of the season, they're at number 6. Coming in at number 5, I have the Packers. So the Packers enter at number 5 after they beat the Texans by a score of 24-22 on a walk-off field goal from kicker Brandon McManus. And this was actually the first game for McManus this season, as well as kicker for the Packers, as he was signed earlier in the week, and he delivered for the Packers with a walk-off field goal. But the Packers' offense was solid, putting up 24 points, and Jordan Love was pretty good, but ever since wearing that Brett Favre jersey, he has played a lot like Brett Favre, as he finished with 220 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 picks. But the Packers defense also played well, allowing just 197 yards and 3.4 yards per play, plus they got to the quarterback 4 times. But the Packers, after a good win over the Texans, I have them at number 5. Coming in at number 4, I've got the Ravens. So the Ravens remain at 4 after their 41-31 win over the Buccaneers. Now, the score makes this game look a lot closer than it actually was, but the Ravens, they were dominant in this win. They got off to a slow start, trailing 10-0 at the end of the first quarter, but dominated the second and third quarters to be leading 34-10 entering the fourth, before the Buccaneers scored a lot to make it look closer. But the Ravens, they played really well. Lamar Jackson was great, with 281 yards and 5 passing touchdowns, which tied a career high, and he also had 52 yards as a rusher. Derrick Henry also played a great game with 15 carries for 169 yards and also had a receiving touchdown. And then defensively for the Ravens, they did allow over 30 points, but most of the points were garbage time points. But the Ravens, after a good win over the Buccaneers, they're at number 4. Third, I've got the Vikings. So the Vikings, they drop a spot after they lost their first game of the season, losing 31-29 to the Lions. They got off to a great start, up 10-0 at the end of the first quarter, but they then allowed the Lions to score the next 21 points, and then they went back and forth, but the Vikings ended up losing. But this was a very close game. Sam Darnold threw for 259 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. The Vikings also ran the football effectively, rushing for 139 yards and a touchdown on 6.6 yards per carry. And defensively for the Vikings, they had their worst game of the season, allowing 31 points and worth 400 yards, but they were also playing one of the best offenses in the NFL. But the Vikings, they're still a great team. They lost on a last-second field goal pretty much to a very good Lions team. It's their first loss of the season, and I've got them at number 3. Coming in at number 2, I've got the Lions. So the Lions move up to number 2 after they knocked off the Vikings, winning 31-29, thanks to a field goal in the final minute from kicker Jake Bates. But the Lions, they played well. Offensively, they became the first team this season to score 30 points against the Vikings defense. Jared Goff had a great game with 280 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs also had a big game with 150 scrimmage yards and 2 touchdowns. And Amon-Ra St. Brown was also great with 8 catches for 112 yards and a score. The Lions defense was solid, but the good thing for the Lions defense is despite not having Aiden Hutchinson, they still had 4 sacks. But the Lions, they beat the previously undefeated Vikings, and they're now at number 2. And coming in at number 1, I've got the Chiefs. They've remained at number 1 in my power rankings. They're now the only undefeated team in the NFL after they beat the 49ers by a score of 28-18. Offensively for the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes wasn't great, throwing for just 154 yards and 2 picks, and has actually now thrown an interception in every game this season. But the Chiefs, they leaned on their run game and defense in the win, as they ran for 184 yards and 4 touchdowns, and the defense was great, forcing 3 turnovers. But the Chiefs, they're now the league's only undefeated team at 6-0, and they've remained number 1 in my power rankings. But those are my Week 8 NFL Power Rankings, and thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, turn on notifications. I do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you in the next video.